Hi, everybody. Welcome to another edition of the Josh video Zoom chat or video chat for job seekers. Today, I have a special co-host, Margaret Buj. Margaret's someone that I've known for a number of years online. And this is the first time that we've seen each other face to face, which is really, really cool and exciting. Thank you, Margaret, so much for joining us tonight. Really exciting.
It's fun. Yeah, pleasure.
So let me just tell everyone about who Margaret is, so you'll know. So Margaret, I know you're based in the UK. The way that you describe yourself, and I know this for a fact, Margaret is a career and interview coach who has helped thousands of people worldwide to get the jobs and promotions they want or wanted. She also has 15 years of experience recruiting for global tech companies across Europe and the US. She was recognized as one of the top career influencers to follow in 2019. Very cool. She has created an online course called Get the Job You Want. She's written an ebook called Land That Job. She has a website. She has a YouTube channel. She's on Instagram. So there's plenty of cool things to get from Margaret. And so again, thank you so much for joining us today.
Oh, thank you for inviting me. I haven't actually done the YouTube live before, so I'm quite excited. A bit nervous.
Yeah. I'm sure it'll be great. You've done many speaking events, and many times you've spoken. You appeared on other platforms. You'll be fine. Not a problem. So for anyone who's watching who has never come to a what I call a Josh chat, it's a job search online hangout. So I kind of screw around with the letters to make it easy to say. Basically, this is meant to be an open-ended chat. Anyone can come send a question in advance. You can come. Today, for the first time, we were doing this live on YouTube. And so anyone who's following along, and there were a handful of people following along, you can post a question in the chat box, and we'll get to the questions in order. You can send you can send questions over email. And of course, we will have plenty of things to talk about. Not a problem. And so if anyone's following right now, I'd like to see you tell us what kinds of job search issues you're dealing with right now, and we will happily get to that. But I have a first question to get things started for Margaret. So, of course, right now, everyone is still dealing with COVID-19, coronavirus, et cetera. It's changed a lot of things. And this has been a recurring theme, understandably, that's come up in these Josh chats over the past, now it's been just over 2 months, because everyone is going through this at the same time. There's a lot of ways that it's affected job search. And so as someone who's in contact with people constantly, what are you hearing as the number one change that people are affected by in terms of COVID-19 for job seekers specifically?
Yeah, I think the main change is that there are a lot fewer jobs available. That's really the main change. I mean, people, of course, are still getting hired. I've had a client actually got a job last week. I had a couple of friends who got jobs during coronavirus time. So, of course, hiring is still happening. But I think the main chance is so many people were laid off or made redundant. And the competition is higher, and there are definitely fewer jobs available. I can't remember what were the stats I looked at, but I think in the UK, compared to the same time last year or a few months ago, I can't remember exactly what it was, but it was 60% less jobs than before.
Wow.
So that's massive. I think that's really the main change. I think another change is that the interviews definitely have moved online. So a lot of Zoom interviews, and it would be good to discuss that later, because I think good to say, I mean, Zoom interviews, of course, existed before COVID-19, but they are really commonplace right now. I mean, clearly there are no face-to-face interviews at present, and they are mostly just Zoom interviews or Blue Jeans or Skype or whatever, but Zoom is definitely very popular.
Sure.
That's another change. And I think things will take a lot longer. You really need to exercise extreme patience as a job seeker right now, because there's so much uncertainty right now. I mean, things here in the UK change every day, every week. Yeah. So a lot of companies, they are just quite uncertain about the future. Hence, not as much recruitment. And I think companies are really, what I'm noticing, companies are really taking time to hire right now. So the process is taking longer. Some of them maybe started to recruit right now, but they aren't necessarily looking for the right candidate to start immediately. It could be in a month or 2 or 3 or whatever. It's going to be. So I think these are the main changes. And I think another change just some of the industries, like who would have expected? I mean, no, hardly any jobs in hospitality, right, or airlines. Like, who would have expected these industries?
Tourism, yeah.
Tourism. I mean, I would have never expected that in a million years. So that's definitely a big change. And I think, some companies and industries are, of course, thriving. I mean, when you look at Amazon, when you look at online retail in general, when you look at companies like Zoom, providing, technology to communicate. Also, when you look at online learning, when you look at the millions of people who are at home right now, both adults and kids at school, I think these companies, I imagine, are doing pretty well as well.
Yeah, there's a lot of points that you touched on there that you reminded me of something that a job seeker said to me recently when I was asking about virtual events and what kinds of virtual events they had been attending. They said, frankly, everything is so up in the air right now. I don't know when it's going to change. I don't know when I'm going to have a chance to go back to work. And I don't really see the point of spending too much time learning one thing when I don't know if it's going to be what I need 3 months down the line, for example, because everything is so unstable. The market may change dramatically. That's what some people are feeling. Not everyone feels that way. There's a lot of people who definitely understand that, yeah, you can anticipate the kinds of directions that companies are going in. And if you already know, companies are still working, right? There are still projects that are being done. There are still sales that are being made. You can, if something was trendy in your market before, it'll still be trendy in your market very likely in a few months. And so it can be a good time to sit down and learn a new skill and add to your arsenal, I guess you could say, if you choose skills wisely and if you actually start practicing them. It's another thing that I've seen, which is that people are reskilling, but they're not actually getting a chance to practice those new skills. And so if they go back to working in only, let's say, a couple of months or more, what have they retained from it? Will they be able to prove that they have added that new skill aside from just putting it on their resume? Will they be able to take one of the things you mentioned in terms of virtual interviewing is that the whole process is now virtual, right? And so it's not so new in the tech world specifically. You'll have a lot of candidates years ago who were taking a test to show their aptitude, or not their aptitude, but to show their ability regarding a certain skill. So that's not new. But if you haven't practiced that skill that you just picked up, then you're still not going to do well on that test, and so the candidate is not going to move forward in the process. So yeah, you gotta be careful. But okay, let's zero back to what you're talking about in terms of the interview process specifically, since we know that you specialize in interviewing. Virtual interviews, not something that's new, something that's been going on for a while, but not as common perhaps. And so it's obvious that it's happening a lot more now. We know that, but how has it changed from the past to what's going on right now?
I think what's changed is that now the whole process takes place via Zoom or Skype or whatever it is.
Yeah.
From what I understand, I haven't heard of anyone conducting on-site interviews. I think that's what's changed. Typically, in my experience, that the first interview would often be a telephone or a Skype or just a video call of any kind, but then that will be there will be an on-site interview after that. Right now, that doesn't happen. So actually, as a candidate, you might not be able to visit the office, and a lot of companies are doing onboarding remotely as well. So that's definitely a change. Even the last company I was recruiting for, I was recruiting for some roles internationally, and again, they were doing all the onboarding remotely. And I think a lot of organizations are doing the same. They are doing onboarding remotely, and they're actually hiring people in the current climate and letting them sound remotely. So I think that's definitely the biggest change in terms of Zoom interviews. But again, there are a lot of people who are just not really used to that. There are a lot of people who just, how can I really prepare? How can I really? They think that's. I mean, of course, there are benefits to on-site interview. Absolutely. Like, of course, you want to meet the team. Of course, you want to see what the office looks like. But I think even in the current climate, you can still meet the team. Like even if you are interviewing with the hiring manager and a couple
like this.
If you are already, like, let's say they are making you an offer, you can still request to speak to, maybe just arrange like a Zoom call with some of your colleagues. I mean, I don't know that. Why would you? I think it's quite risky to accept the job without knowing what your colleagues are like. So I think you can still request that, but we have to be adaptable. It is what it is. Like, and who knows? I'm actually really quite curious how it's going to affect the world of work later after the is over. Because I think the positive side is that many companies were happening very slow in embracing flexibility, and there's so much research showing that it's so much, a lot of employees value the flexibility, whether they have
Sure.
kids or, long commute, or actually we don't even need to have any of that, to value flexibility. I don't have any of that. And, I do value the opportunity to work from home a couple of times a week, maybe 2-3 days a week. That's what I had in my last company, which was, a great balance, not having the commute for a few days a week, and you can just really focus at home. At least, in my case, I can really focus at home. So, so I think that's good that some companies are, they have no choice. They have to be flexible right now. But I'm really curious how it's going to affect, like what it will look like after coronavirus is over. Because I think on one hand, companies will have to be more flexible, which is great.
Yeah.
But I think also the potential risk is, if everyone can work from home, and I don't think it's going to be everyone, but, if almost everyone can work from home, why pay someone a London rate or New York City rate, right? If they can hire someone in the state or in another location, that's a lot cheaper. So I think that's really the risk as well. I'm curious to see how it plays out.
I think it's a really interesting question as well. I was discussing with a blogger based in the States about this topic specifically, and I think that lots of companies everyone's been thrown into the situation, and many companies, in my experience, they don't know how to deal with working remotely, and so it really is a growing pain.
They really don't, and I think that's another reason why the interview process right now is taking so much longer, because there are some companies. My experience is recruiting for tech companies. Tech or e-commerce companies. So by nature, they are pretty much used to working remotely, and they have
internet. Yeah,
absolutely. It's like, people are used to it, and a lot of people work remotely in those organizations. Like the infrastructure for that is already there, but that's not the case for everyone.
Yeah,
that is not the case. I think those companies, it's definitely a much more of a transition period process for them. And I think also when those companies are recruiting, it's going to take longer.
I think there's an interesting opportunity there, actually, for companies who, not just companies, but people who have experience with remote work, who can either mention that as on the resume or as part of the recruitment process. They can say, I have this value, I can help you do this. But also companies who can approach other companies to consult them on how to adjust to the new change. I think that there will definitely be some companies who will be skeptical. They don't know how long this is going to go on for. Should they bother investing if this is going to be over in another few weeks or something? They don't really know. So it's hard to say. I think a lot will depend also on how their existing employees deal with what's already happened. In other words, if they'll understand there's some pain, but if they are seeing some of the benefits, not just for their employees, but for the company, then they'll say, okay, we've gotten a taste of it. There's been a bit of progress there. Maybe we can do better if we invest in this, and that'll be something to push them forward. Whereas in other cases where it's completely been nightmare, they're not going to want to spend on anything, and they're going to want to end this as soon as possible. And I'm really skeptical just on my own. It's like, it reminds me of the outsourcing wave back when it was like 10 years ago or whatever it was, where everybody wanted to outsource to India or Ukraine or whatever. And so all these contracts were heading out there, and companies thought they're going to save so much money by farming all this stuff out there. And then everything ultimately came back because they didn't know how to deal with managing people abroad. It was just a big mess. And most companies lost more than they gained. So I wonder if it'll go the same way. But it'll depend on how long this goes on for. Anyway, so let's talk about something else that you mentioned a few minutes ago. So people are interviewing. We know the job seekers, they come to a virtual interview. There's no question, I can put this out there, that because more people are doing this right now, everyone's home, the bar is lower, right? Expectations are lower. No one's expecting to be an expert with video interviews the way that they would have a same expectation when you're coming to a regular interview. Whereas in the past, we would expect that, okay, if someone's going to do a video interview, they're going to take certain steps to prepare for it. Nowadays, again, if the bar is lower, so what kinds of things do you think that job seekers, or anybody for that matter, should be doing to make it so their video interview is as impressive as it can be? What kinds of things are you recommending to people?
Absolutely. So, I agree that the expectations are lower in a way that I think no one will mind if your child will run past during of course, you try to minimize those disruptions as a job seeker, but people are not, like there are a lot of people stuck at home, homeschooling 3 kids and
Yeah.
trying to do their job or maybe looking for another job. So it's a lot to deal with, for sure. So I think employers will be a lot more just lenient and more flexible, and it happens. They might have kids at home as well, but at the same time, I think you absolutely need to make an effort and show that you are genuinely interested in the opportunity. So so I'll talk about the interview prep and just the whole Zoom prep. So in terms of the Zoom prep, you definitely want to test your connection earlier. You want to make sure that you have a good, background. There's nothing distracting in the background. Like, you don't want the interviewer to see, a basket with laundry, behind you, right? So like just basic like that. Even lighting is so important. You want to be facing, this is fine, it's absolutely fine. You want to be facing the light idea. So many times I do my coaching sessions on Zoom, on Skype, and many times that we start the session and I'm saying to the client, actually I can't see you because your back
They're
is
looking at the screen.
You can see the silhouette. I'm like, just moving. So things like that you do want to practice before the interview. Definitely. So lighting, I would definitely turn off your mobile phone so there are no notifications, turn off any other applications. You want to check the background, you want to check the lighting. You want to dress professionally. Of course, you don't need to wear a suit, I don't think, but at the same time, you don't want to be sitting there like looking super casual.
Pajamas.
So, exactly. No, I mean, absolutely. A friend once interviewed a candidate, again, that was before COVID-19, but I mean, the guy was just sitting there like in his joggers and just like a, like a it was actually nice.
Maybe he thought they couldn't see him.
I don't know what he was thinking, but obviously doesn't create the best impression. So you still want to make an effort, at least dress up from here up, right? Like, what you're wearing at the but anyway, at least you want to dress up a little bit. Keep an eye contact. So again, that's actually how, like right now I'm looking at the camera. Yes, so it's like if I'm keeping eye contact, right now I'm looking at you on the screen, which is a lot more convenient because now I can see your reaction. But really what you want to be doing is mostly looking at the camera, because of course it's a lot harder to build rapport when it's a video interview, like you don't see the reaction. So I think you want to be looking at the camera a lot, and maybe occasionally look at the interviewer. Smile a little bit, because like it's always you always make a better impression if you smile. So the whole the body language, the same rules: sit up straight, yes, don't slouch. You want to keep eye contact. You want to smile. You want to make sure that you just look good. You just look professional on the camera. And then in terms of engaging, whether it's one person or one interviewer or a panel interview, of course it's a lot harder to engage with people. So I think I would definitely recommend checking out the interviewer before on LinkedIn, like see what you can find. I mean, it might be that they have a really poor LinkedIn profile and you can't find anything at all, but I think it's a good idea just to check, where are they located? Just like basically look on their LinkedIn, look at their activity on LinkedIn, and what do they care about? What kind of things do they comment on? And then you might want to bring something up. I mean, not in like a stalkerish way, because you don't want to come across as some weird stalker who's been, checking them out for the last week. And well, you did X, Y, Z. I don't think it's going to create the best impression. But let's say one interviewer is in, in Munich, right? You can just say, what is it like in Munich today, or whatever, just to build that kind of rapport. In the beginning, I would definitely prepare some questions for the interviewer. So whenever I've had, well, frankly, any interview, but for Zoom in particular, I would make sure I have some specific questions for each of the interviewers. Not just like, general questions that you would ask, like, in general, of course, you want to ask some good questions prepared, like about the day-to-day, or maybe how they're dealing with the impact from COVID-19, or what are the expectations, what's the onboarding like, what do they expect you to achieve in the first few months, and challenges and priorities.
An excuse to bring each one into the conversation.
But I would also ask some maybe specific questions. So like maybe you've seen that the person came from a company that I don't know, maybe they joined from a different industry. So you can say, I've seen that you worked for XYZ company for a few years. How did you find the transition to move to this industry? Or just something, like try to find some common ground. But at the same time, I think, like, don't stress too much. It's like, I think it's already stressful, having to do the full interview via Zoom. But it's always a good idea to find some common ground. And in terms of the interview preparation, you want to do the same prep that you would do for a face-to-face interview. So you want to have your, career history. Like if they ask you, tell us about yourself, you want to make sure that you have a strong career history, that you're really clear about what it is that you can bring to the role, that you can quantify your achievements. So that's what, like, one of the biggest mistakes in interviews is that people talk about what they have done, but not enough about what they've achieved or the impact of the work. So
Yes,
it's very important
classic.
to know that, right? That's like a classic one. But people still do it. So even people who actually have pretty good experience. So you want to make sure that you know exactly what you can bring to the position, what your quantifiable achievements are. Like for every job that you did, ask yourself, what was I hired to do? What did I do? And what was the result? And you can ask yourself these questions for any of the projects that you worked on in a specific job. So maybe you have 5 or 6 projects in one specific job, and ask yourself these questions. And how can you quantify the results of your work? So if you save time, if you save money, of course, that's easier. But it doesn't have to be that. You can just talk about. So I mean, just to give you some example, I was once doing a workshop in a public sector organizations within civil service. And, it's a lot easier to quantify your experience if you work in sales, right? Because you can say, I've increased sales by 120%. And if you work in marketing, you can talk about, the opt-in rates or click-through rate or number of leads or whatever. So there are some jobs that, of course, it's easier.
Lend themselves
your experience, but you can quantify your experience in any way. So this just to I was working in that workshop with a lot of social workers. So they're like, I have no idea how to most of them like, I have no idea how to quantify my experience. I've asked them more questions, and actually, a lot of them worked on say, can't remember the exact number, but say it was 50 cases each month, and maybe they were successfully closing 20 cases each month. So like ongoing 50 and successfully closing 20. So that's 20 families impacted by what they were doing.
Yeah.
So you can like ask yourself how much or how many. So maybe you work as an accounts payable. Instead of saying processing invoices, you can say successfully process 500 invoices per week. At least that shows good organizational skills. There's always ways that you can quantify your experience.
There's actually a really subtle point to what you're saying too, which is that if you're still working at a company while you're looking for a job, then you're much more likely to still have access to those numbers than if you're no longer there. And all too often, people don't think about that information until their job search, which is after they left, and they don't necessarily have a way of getting those numbers anymore. So people really should think ahead a little bit while they're still working, especially if they think that a job search may be coming up. Really jump on that, take advantage of that time to try to start collecting numbers at the very least, so that you can use them exactly the way that you're saying.
That's such a good point, Jacob, actually. And I was really glad you mentioned that, because that's exactly that. Most people don't think about it. I would really recommend to everyone, just open a Google document or a Word document, and just, actually wherever you want to keep that. Just every time you get acknowledged for something, you have a success, just put it on that list, because you won't remember that 6 months later.
Yeah.
You might not remember the detail. Or every time you receive really good feedback, again, add it to that list. Because you're right, quite often you will not be able to get the numbers once you've left the company. Again, you can estimate; it doesn't have to be exact number, but
right.
But still, you want to have those numbers.
You could add it to your LinkedIn profile. I mean, you can kill 2 birds with 1 stone that way.
Yeah, absolutely.
Show off a little bit.
Always make sure you get some recommendations from LinkedIn when you leave in the company. I think especially if you're losing your job. Of course, everyone wants to help you because they feel sorry for you. So good time.
Yeah, for sure.
Good time to ask recommendations. Well, exactly. If no one wants to give you one, then I think you should have a hard look in the mirror. Why? But yeah, in terms of the interview preparation, you want to make your answers relevant. Like, what problems are you solving for the employer? And I would definitely recommend you do a lot of research. A lot of people will do the basic research. So they will look on a company website and maybe Google them.
Yeah.
But I would really go beyond that. So things you can do. I mean, of course, you want to look at the website. I would Google them to see what kind of articles come up. I would set up a Google alert as well to see what kind of, so every time the company comes up in the news, you will see some information. And, I know it's a lot harder to find information about a small company versus a large multinational company.
Sure.
But, just in general, I would look at all of the social media profiles and think what kind of things they are posting about and they are tweeting about, kind of what's important to them, how do they interact with the audience. Another one, especially for like executive level positions, actually for any roles, but especially for executive level roles, I would look at the leadership, who's on the leadership team, and look at the YouTube interviews. So you literally type in the name of the person, the CEO of, whatever, and type in YouTube interview, because, you will hear what kind of words they're using to describe the business. You are likely to hear about some initiatives that you are, maybe you just won't read about them on the website. And also, so I think we definitely look at the YouTube or any kind of interviews with the leadership. Of course, you can look at all the company reports and all the financial data. Maybe listen to earnings call again to see how they're interacting. Especially now, it's going to be so much more competitive than it used to be. So you really want to have an edge and go there having some information they don't expect you to have. So that's why listening to the earnings call, or listening to the interviews of the exec team on YouTube, or just like really having some information and knowing how you can help them and trying to understand the challenges. I think depending on what role you're applying for, let's say you're applying for a job in sales or business development, or not even that, customer success or anything, marketing or anything that has that client contact. Why not even speak to some potential customer and interview them, maybe ask them, what do you think about the product or the service of this company? Look, I just imagine how impressed they would be if you say, I've spoken to 15 of your customers or potential customers, and they are saying X, Y, Z. So you can really impress someone by having that knowledge and having that research. And I would also say, make sure you have enough, a lot of interviews, they would ask you the competency-based questions. So they can ask you about achievements and challenging situations, and maybe times you've had to influence, and, times you have to deal with a difficult person or a subordinate or your management style. So again, I think everyone knows the STAR format, the situation, task, action, result, but really practice your stories. To really make yourself stand out. You need enough detail there. You need to be concise, but you can't be too concise, because then they won't actually understand what you've done and how. So you still need maybe a 2-3 minute story for all of these common interview questions. Just that clearly demonstrates what was the situation, what were your specific actions, and then what was the impact.
Then you can go deeper.
And then you can go deeper. So that would be the advice.
I think that it's such a great point that people today we have so many opportunities to do research on potential companies that we didn't have in the past. And it just emphasizes that if you didn't do the research, then you're being lazy, or you're not just taking any effort in your job search the way you should. There's really no excuse. The information is out there almost every single time. You just have to go get it. And another thing is that so often, if people do the research, they wait until it's not that it's too late. In other words, if you wait to do it just before the interview, that's better than nothing. Don't get me wrong. That's for sure. But why not do it before you even apply to the company to decide if you even want to work there or not? We all know cases of so many people who fight and go through the process and finally get hired, only to discover they don't like working there, whether it's a week later or 3 months later or whatever. If you had done the research early on, you could have avoided all this mess by not applying there in the first place.
And another one that, just to your point, I wouldn't even apply for a job without checking Glassdoor reviews on the company, because while every company will have negative reviews, that's normal. There, you can't make everyone happy. There will always there's always someone with a bad experience, whether their fault or not their fault, it doesn't matter. There will always be someone who had a bad experience, and not necessarily a disgruntled employee. That could be the case as well, but it just could be someone who, for whatever reason, had a bad experience. But I remember a few years ago, I was looking for a job, and there was this company that the job actually looked quite interesting, and I had the relevant experience. I went on Glassdoor. I think literally I don't think there were any positive reviews.
Wow. Big red flag.
Reviews, and especially about interviews. Basically, loads of people said, don't even interview with them. They would just the kind of main feedback I remember were they want to get the information from you to get the kind of market data, to get your ideas, but they actually so I'm like, wow, okay, well, great, that's my time saved. And also when I interview people, I will check the Glassdoor reviews, and I will when I interview someone, I will actually ask about some of these things that maybe are raised in those reviews, because you don't want to be you don't want to sound negative, but at the same time, I mean, for example, myself, I work in recruitment, apart from doing coaching. If I don't believe in the company, how can I sell it to a potential candidate? So if I was interviewing with someone and I would see some negative reviews, I would absolutely ask about them and see how the company answers that. You know, are they open?
That's a great way.
And transparent, or are they just kind of brushing that off and, oh no, these grounded employees? I mean, that would be good enough. They can answer that. So
yeah, I love that, because intellectual honesty is something that I appreciate, and I think that people should appreciate, and that's a great way of quickly putting someone on a spot to see how they react. I think that's a really good question. That you can get critical thinking. Yeah,
I did that once with a company, and I can't remember exactly what the specific comment was, but there were some comments about the leadership team and the leadership style, and yeah, anyway, I did ask a few questions about that, because I said, you know, a lot of reviews say X, Y, Z. And I had to say that I actually answered really well. They did explain that there was a previous team, you know, the kind of, they owned up the mistakes that the team made, and there's a new leadership team, and, you know, whatever else they said. But they acknowledged that, you know, they didn't just say, oh, no, it was just this disgruntled employee. They were actually quite honest, and I like that. At least they seemed honest. Anyway, so
yeah, no. Yeah, it's a two-way game.
You have to remember, like, I know it's a difficult time for a lot of us right now, and you know, you might be completely desperate for a job, not just want a job, but desperate. But you never want to come across as desperate for a job, and you also need to interview them, because you know, you are not. Hopefully, you're not looking for any job, right? Hopefully, you're looking for a job where you can stay, you know, for a few years. And you know, it might be that you're looking for any job, but still, yeah, I think it's good to ask some questions as well. Like, you need to interview them as well, and you need to make sure it's the right place for you. Even if you only want to stay there for a few months, you know, you still want to make sure it's the right place for you.
Okay, well, I would love to keep talking, and we could keep going on for a long, long time, no question about it. But we're already up at the half an hour mark, which is that's the link to these Josh chats. So I want to thank you, Margaret, so much for co-hosting with me. We didn't get any questions in the chat today, although people have been following, so they're going to have to. Maybe they'll ask in the comments afterwards. We'll see. I just want to mention again that. You have an online course called Get the Job You Want. You have an ebook called Land That Job. Your website, it's margaretbuj.co.uk. Is it?
It's a www.interview-coach.co.uk. So
okay, fantastic. And
under Margaret Buj, because you know, we were talking about the research, and I actually have a really good short video about how to research the interviewer, the company, the job, and the interviewer. So I have like a 3-4 minute video on YouTube that's exactly on that topic, and I think people will find it useful.
Perfect. That's a perfect segue. Okay, so thank you very much for co-hosting, and thank you everybody for watching.
Thank you for having me.
It's a pleasure. It was natural. And again, this is part of a series. There will be more Josh chats that you can find on the JobMob YouTube channel. And again, thank you everyone for coming along, and that's the end of this chat for now. Thanks, Margaret.
Thank you.
Okay.